10 Hollywood stars with the worst tempers of all time. Number 2 is shocking. Behind the glamorous red carpets and flawlessly delivered lines lies Hollywood's darkest open secret. Some of the industry's biggest stars are notorious for explosive tempers that have terrorized film sets, reduced crew members to tears, and created legends of bad behavior that echo through entertainment history. While publicists work overtime to maintain carefully crafted public images of their celebrity clients, those who work behind the camera tell dramatically different stories. Tales of narcissistic rage, psychological warfare, and sometimes even physical violence from the very stars audiences adore on screen. There's a reason film crews use code words to warn each other when certain actors arrive on set, revealed a veteran Hollywood production coordinator who has worked with several stars on our list. A message like, "The Eagle has landed," isn't just announcing a star's arrival. It's triggering a well-rehearsed protocol for minimizing triggers that might set off the talent's notorious temper. What makes these explosive personalities particularly fascinating isn't just the dramatic contrast between their public and private behaviors, but how differently the industry treats them based on their box office value. The same conduct that would immediately terminate a crew member's employment becomes excused as artistic temperament when it comes from someone whose name can secure millions in financing. Tonight we count down the 10 Hollywood stars with the most legendary tempers in entertainment history, performers whose brilliant on-screen work has been matched only by their shocking off-camera behavior. From screaming tirades captured on tape to physical altercations that required medical attention, these are the industry's most feared and infamous personalities. But first, let's begin with an Academy Award-winning actor whose epic meltdown became the gold standard by which all celebrity temper tantrums are measured. A volcanic eruption so intense it permanently altered how Hollywood views method acting versus simple unprofessional rage. His tirade included 39 F-bombs in under 4 minutes. Christian Bale didn't just lose his temper, he created the most infamous meltdown in modern Hollywood history. And it was all caught on tape.
You have an arc in the movie.
Yes.
What's the arc? He goes from psychopath to psychotic.
Yes. I think that's right. He totally...
1. Christian Bale. The Dark Knight's darker side. When audio of Christian Bale's explosive on-set meltdown leaked in 2009, it forever changed the public perception of the intensely private actor. Recorded during the filming of Terminator Salvation, the 3-minute, 39-second tirade captured Bale unleashing a profanity-laden verbal assault on cinematographer Shane Hurlbut, who had made the apparently unforgivable mistake of walking into Bale's line of sight during a take. "I want you off the thing set, you prick," Bale shouted in a rant that included approximately 39 variations of the F-word in less than 4 minutes. "Do you want me to fing trash your lights? Do you want me to fucking trash them? Then why are you trashing my scene?" The intensity of Bale's rage, captured in crystal clear audio that quickly went viral, shocked both fans and industry insiders. It wasn't just the language that disturbed listeners, but the sustained nature of the attack, with Bale repeatedly threatening Hurlbut's job and professional reputation while the cinematographer attempted to apologize. "Professional? Barely. Volcanic? Always," commented a crew member who has worked with Bale on multiple productions. What people don't realize is that the leaked audio wasn't an isolated incident, but representative of how Bale can behave when he feels his process is being interrupted. The only unusual aspect was that someone recorded it and made it public. While Bale eventually issued a public apology for the incident, describing it as an overreaction during an intense scene, reports from other productions suggest a pattern of similar behavior. During filming of American Psycho, director Mary Harron reportedly instructed crew members to avoid eye contact with Bale between takes to prevent triggering his volatile temper. The actor's intensity extends beyond verbal confrontations. During the filming of The Fighter, the role that would win him an Academy Award, Bale reportedly engaged in heated arguments with director David O. Russell, himself known for volatile on-set behavior. When two legendary tempers collided, crew members described screaming matches that made the walls shake. What makes Bale's temper particularly notable is how it contrasts with his extraordinary technical precision as an actor, explained an industry veteran who has observed Bale on set. He'll transform his body through dramatic weight changes, master complex accents, and deliver technically flawless performances, then undermine that professionalism with outbursts that terrify everyone around him. Bale's defenders often point to his method acting approach as context for his behavior, suggesting his immersion in dark, troubled characters sometimes bleeds into his off-camera persona. However, crew members who have experienced his wrath firsthand dispute this explanation. Method acting doesn't excuse treating people like they're beneath you, noted a sound technician who witnessed one of Bale's explosions. Many actors stay in character between takes without verbally assaulting crew members who are just trying to do their jobs. What we experienced wasn't artistic commitment, it was intimidation from someone who knew the production couldn't fire him. Despite his notorious temper, Bale remains one of Hollywood's most sought-after actors, a testament to both his undeniable talent and the industry's willingness to accommodate difficult behavior from performers who deliver at the box office. His ability to transform himself physically and psychologically for roles continues to impress critics and audiences alike, even as his reputation makes crew members approach new projects with trepidation. "The worst part about working with Bale isn't even the explosions," confided the crew member. "It's the constant tension of knowing it could happen at any moment. Everyone walks on eggshells, terrified of being the next Shane Hurlbutt. That kind of environment doesn't produce better art, it just produces ulcers." Her performances won Oscars, but her behind-the-scenes behavior was even more dramatic. Joan Crawford didn't just play terrifying women, she became one the moment cameras stopped rolling.
Helped me to be a good businesswoman. You see, pictures have given me all the education I ever had since I never went beyond the 5th grade.
2. Joan Crawford, Hollywood's ice queen with a fiery temper. Long before Mommy Dearest exposed Joan Crawford's alleged private cruelty to a shocked public, Hollywood insiders were all too familiar with the Oscar-winning actress's legendary temper. Behind the carefully constructed image of glamour and sophistication that defined her public persona lurked a volcanic temperament that terrorized co-stars, directors, and crew members throughout her 5-decade career. The wire hangers weren't the scariest part, revealed a set decorator who worked on several Crawford productions in the 1940s and 50s. Her explosive anger could be triggered by anything. Lighting, she felt, was unflattering. Costumes that didn't meet her exacting standards, or crew members who dared to look her in the eye without permission. The entire set would freeze when she walked in, everyone terrified of becoming her next target. Crawford's perfectionism often manifested as cruel and sometimes physically aggressive behavior. During filming of The Women, 1939, she reportedly became so enraged at co-star Norma Shearer that she ripped the back of Shearer's dress in the middle of a scene, forcing an expensive reshoot and creating a delay that cost the studio thousands of dollars. Studio executives, recognizing Crawford's box office value, allowed this behavior to continue with minimal consequences. She once slapped a makeup artist so hard his glasses flew across the room, all because he hadn't powdered her neck to her satisfaction, claimed a hairstylist who worked at MGM during Crawford's tenure there. Another time, she threw a pot of hot coffee at a costume assistant who brought her the wrong shade of gloves. These weren't isolated incidents. They were Tuesday for Joan. What makes Crawford's case particularly shocking is how successfully her publicity team maintained her public image as the consummate professional, despite widespread industry knowledge of her behavior. While other stars with difficult reputations saw their careers suffer, Crawford's careful image management and strategic relationships with gossip columnists helped insulate her from public criticism for decades. Joan understood power better than almost anyone in Hollywood, explained a film historian who has studied Crawford's career. She knew exactly which relationships to cultivate: studio heads, publicity departments, influential columnists like Luella Parsons and Hedda Hopper. This network of influence allowed her to maintain her public persona while behaving however she wanted behind closed doors. Crawford's temper reportedly worsened as her career declined, with her behavior on the set of later films like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane becoming increasingly erratic. Director Robert Aldrich found himself mediating constant conflicts between Crawford and co-star Bette Davis, another actress known for difficult behavior. Crew members described the production as working in a war zone where neither side would surrender. The tragic element of Crawford's story is how her temper ultimately isolated her, observed a biographer who interviewed many of Crawford's former colleagues. By the end of her life, her reputation for abusive behavior had alienated virtually everyone around her. The control she sought through intimidation ultimately left her alone, with even her own children detailing her cruelty after her death. Despite the disturbing nature of these accounts, Crawford's legacy as an actress remains secure. Her performances in films like Mildred Pierce, for which she won an Academy Award, demonstrate her undeniable talent and screen presence. This disconnect between artistic achievement and personal behavior represents one of Hollywood's most persistent ethical dilemmas: how to reconcile brilliant work with the sometimes terrible conduct of those who created it. What made Crawford's temper uniquely terrifying wasn't just its intensity, but its calculation, noted the film historian. Unlike some stars who explode randomly, Joan weaponized her anger, deploying it strategically to establish dominance and control. She didn't just lose her temper, she used it as a tool to ensure everyone around her lived in fear. Russell Crowe doesn't just play fighters on screen, he's become Hollywood's most notorious real-life brawler, with a rap sheet of violent outbursts that would make his gladiator character proud.
So, I was playing in a football game, rugby league actually, and I tackled this big fat kid, right around the ankles, smack, went down like a sack of shit.
3. Russell Crowe, gladiator with a grudge. Russell Crowe's transformation from respected Australian actor to Hollywood superstar coincided with the emergence of a reputation for volcanic anger that would eventually rival his considerable on-screen achievements. The Oscar winner's temper has manifested not just in verbal tirades, but in physical altercations that have resulted in legal consequences and millions in settlement payments. His fists worked harder than his agents, quipped a Hollywood producer who has observed Crowe's career trajectory. What's remarkable about Russell's anger issues is how publicly they've played out. Most difficult stars at least try to keep their worst behavior behind closed doors, but Crowe has had meltdowns in hotel lobbies, at award shows, and even during televised interviews. The most infamous incident occurred in 2005 when Crowe, frustrated by his inability to complete a call to Australia from his New York hotel room, threw a telephone at hotel employee Nestor Estrada, striking him in the face. This wasn't a momentary lapse, but the culmination of an escalating confrontation that resulted in Crowe's arrest for assault and criminal possession of a weapon, the telephone. The phone-throwing incident cost him approximately $100,000 in settlements and legal fees, noted an entertainment attorney familiar with the case, but the real cost was to his reputation and career trajectory. He was at the peak of his commercial power when it happened, and it created a permanent asterisk next to his name that made studios more cautious about building major projects around him. This caution wasn't unwarranted, as Crowe's history of volatile behavior extends well beyond this single incident. During the BAFTA Awards in 2002, he reportedly pinned producer Malcolm Jerry against a wall and threatened him because Jerry had cut part of Crowe's acceptance speech from the broadcast. At the 2001 Oscars, he allegedly became verbally abusive to staff after his win for Gladiator. Working with Russell was like handling nitroglycerin, revealed a crew member from Robin Hood. His temper could be triggered by seemingly minor issues: a line reading he disagreed with, background noise during a take, even the temperature in his trailer. Some days were perfectly pleasant, but you never knew when the explosion would come. Directors have faced particular challenges managing Crowe's volatile personality. On the set of State of Play, he reportedly engaged in heated arguments with director Kevin MacDonald over script interpretations and character choices. During production of Cinderella Man, even his longtime collaborator Ron Howard struggled to contain Crowe's outbursts when the actor disagreed with technical aspects of the filming. What makes Crowe's temper particularly difficult to navigate is that it's often entangled with legitimate creative concerns, explained a director who has worked with the actor. He's not just angry for anger's sake, he's often advocating for what he genuinely believes will make a better film. The problem is that his approach is so confrontational and aggressive that it undermines the very artistic points he's trying to make. Unlike some stars whose difficult behavior is hidden from the public, Crowe's anger has been captured multiple times by paparazzi and security cameras. This visual evidence has made it impossible for publicists to dismiss accounts of his temper as exaggerated or fabricated, forcing Crowe himself to address his behavior in interviews. "I have a temper," Crowe acknowledged in a 2006 interview, attempting to contextualize his actions. I think rage is a necessary quality. Rage is just another word for energy, and energy is what's required if you are going to have the determination to make your life the way you want it to be. This framing of rage as creative energy reflects how Hollywood often romanticizes difficult behavior from male stars as evidence of passion and artistic commitment rather than recognizing it as the unprofessional conduct it would be deemed in virtually any other industry. The tragic irony of Crowe's case is that his genuine talent and commitment to his craft have been overshadowed by his inability to control his temper, observed a casting director who has worked on several projects involving the actor. He's one of the most transformative actors of his generation, but the conversation inevitably turns to his behavior rather than his performances. That's the real casualty of his rage. His own artistic legacy. Edward Norton doesn't throw phones or scream at assistants. His method is more calculated. He'll quietly take over your movie, rewrite your script, and hijack your editing room, all while explaining why he knows better than you do.
Every night, thousands of these parasites stream across the border like some f***ing pinata exploded. Don't laugh!
4. Edward Norton, the control freak's control freak. Unlike the explosive, visible rages that characterize many Hollywood temper tantrums, Edward Norton's difficult reputation stems from a more controlled but equally disruptive form of anger, a simmering intellectual fury that manifests as relentless control-seeking behavior that has alienated directors, studios, and fellow actors throughout his career. He doesn't explode, he smolders and rewrites your entire film, explained a screenwriter who worked on a project starring Norton. His temper isn't about shouting or throwing things, it's about a fundamental belief that he knows better than anyone else in the room, combined with a willingness to fight relentlessly to impose his vision, regardless of his actual role in the production. Norton's reputation for difficult behavior began early in his career. During the editing of his breakthrough film, American History X, 1998, Norton reportedly clashed so severely with director Tony Kaye that he took control of the editing process without authorization, creating his own cut of the film. When Kaye protested, Norton allegedly used his relationship with studio executives to ensure his version was the one released, an extraordinary power play for an actor early in his career. Kaye was so distressed by Norton's takeover that he tried to have his name removed from the film and replaced with Humpty Dumpty as the director, noted a film historian familiar with the production. While Norton's defenders point out that the version released was critically acclaimed, the precedent it set was troubling. It suggested Norton saw directors as obstacles to overcome rather than creative partners to collaborate with. This pattern continued throughout Norton's career, reaching another flashpoint during production of The Incredible Hulk, 2008. Norton, initially hired only as an actor, reportedly rewrote substantial portions of Zach Penn's script without credit, then clashed with director Louis Leterrier and Marvel Studios over the final cut of the film. The disputes became so intense that Marvel broke with industry protocol by publicly announcing they were recasting Norton's role for The Avengers, citing a desire for an actor who embodies the creativity and collaborative spirit of our other talented cast members. The Marvel statement was Hollywood code for, "We can't work with this person again," observed an industry analyst. Studios rarely publicly acknowledge difficult behavior from stars, preferring to cite scheduling conflicts or creative differences. The fact that Marvel essentially called out Norton's lack of collaborative spirit represented an extraordinary rebuke from a major studio. Directors who have worked with Norton describe a consistent pattern: initial charm and enthusiasm, followed by gradual assertion of control over aspects of production that typically fall outside an actor's purview. Script revisions, casting decisions, editing choices, and even marketing strategies. When these attempts at control are resisted, Norton reportedly becomes increasingly rigid and confrontational. Working with Edward is like a slow-motion hijacking, revealed a director who collaborated with Norton on a mid-2000s project. It begins with reasonable-sounding suggestions, evolves into persistent arguments, and eventually becomes a war of attrition where he simply outlasts anyone who disagrees with him. He doesn't raise his voice. He just never ever stops pushing until he gets his way. Norton's defenders point to his undeniable intelligence and artistic integrity, suggesting his interventions often improve the final product. They note that his perfectionism stems from genuine commitment to quality rather than ego, and that his script contributions have enhanced many projects he's been involved with. The problem isn't that Norton lacks insight or talent, it's that his approach fundamentally undermines the collaborative nature of filmmaking, countered a producer who worked with Norton on 2 projects. Even when his ideas have merit, his method of imposing them creates dysfunctional production environments where other creative voices are suppressed. That's not collaboration, it's a hostile takeover. The impact of Norton's reputation has been significant. Despite his exceptional talent and 3 Academy Award nominations, directors and studios increasingly factor in the potential complications of working with him when making casting decisions. This calculation has likely cost him roles that would have benefited from his considerable acting abilities. Norton represents a fascinating case study in how Hollywood processes difficult behavior, observed the industry analyst. He's not throwing phones or screaming at assistants, behaviors the industry might forgive more readily from commercially valuable stars. Instead, he's challenging the fundamental power structure of how films are made, which the system finds far more threatening than simple tantrums. Faye Dunaway didn't just play difficult women, she elevated difficult behavior to an art form. From throwing cups of urine to slapping makeup artists, her tantrums weren't just legendary, they were career-ending.
Why can't you treat me the way I would be treated by any stranger on the street?
5. Faye Dunaway. Perfection at any cost. Few Hollywood stars have combined exceptional talent and extraordinarily difficult behavior as dramatically as Faye Dunaway. The Oscar-winning actress, whose performances in classics like Bonnie and Clyde, Chinatown, and Network established her as one of the finest actresses of her generation, simultaneously built a reputation for behavior so demanding and volatile that it eventually overshadowed her considerable artistic achievements. Directors say she was brilliant and terrifying, commented a casting director who worked on several productions featuring Dunaway. What made Faye's temper unique wasn't just its intensity, but its unpredictability. She could be perfectly professional one moment, then explode over something as minor as the temperature of her coffee or the angle of a lighting fixture. Dunaway's most notorious on-set behavior occurred during the filming of Mommy Dearest, 1981, where her portrayal of Joan Crawford ironically mirrored many of the abusive behaviors described in the memoir on which the film was based. Crew members reported that Dunaway slapped makeup artists, threw objects at assistants, and demanded that no one wear white on set because she found it distracting. The irony of Faye playing Crawford wasn't lost on anyone who worked on that production, noted a crew member from the film. She would fly into rages that seemed to channel Crawford's worst behavior, then snap back into character for the cameras. The line between performance and reality became frighteningly blurred. One of Dunaway's most infamous incidents allegedly occurred during the filming of Roman Polanski's Chinatown. According to multiple accounts, when Dunaway was not immediately given a bathroom break she requested, she urinated in a cup and threw it at a crew member who approached her trailer. While Dunaway has denied this specific incident, both director Polanski and co-star Jack Nicholson have referenced her difficult behavior during production. Working with Faye was like defusing a bomb, recalled a producer who collaborated with Dunaway in the 1980s. Everything had to be perfect. Her lighting, her costumes, her dialogue, her trailer accommodations. Any deviation could trigger an explosion. Crews would develop elaborate systems just to anticipate and prevent her outbursts. These outbursts weren't limited to film sets. During rehearsals for the Broadway-bound play Tea at 5 in 2019, Dunaway's behavior reportedly became so erratic and abusive that producers took the extraordinary step of firing her just before the production was scheduled to transfer to Broadway. According to reports, she physically and verbally abused crew members, threw things, and arrived hours late for rehearsals. She allegedly threw a salad on the floor when someone brought her lunch, saying she was watching her weight, reported a theater insider familiar with the production. She would forget her lines, blame others for her mistakes, and create an atmosphere so toxic that stage managers were having panic attacks. When producers finally terminated her, they cited physically and verbally abusive behavior toward the production team. What makes Dunaway's case particularly tragic is how her difficult behavior eventually undermined her extraordinary career. Despite her remarkable talent and screen presence, directors and producers became increasingly reluctant to work with her, regardless of how perfect she might be for a role. Major opportunities disappeared as her reputation solidified. Faye's perfectionism was both her greatest strength and her undoing, observed a film historian who has studied Dunaway's career. The same obsessive attention to detail that made her performances so compelling made her virtually impossible to work with. She demanded perfection from herself and everyone around her, but her method of pursuing that perfection through intimidation and rage ultimately cost her the very career opportunities she valued so highly. Despite these well-documented difficulties, those who worked with Dunaway often acknowledged that her talent justified at least some accommodation. Her performances in films like Network, for which she won an Academy Award, demonstrate a raw emotional power and technical precision that few actors of any generation have matched. The tragedy of Faye's story is that her legitimate artistic concerns got buried beneath her methods of expressing them, concluded the film historian. Many of her demands were rooted in genuine commitment to quality, but her inability to communicate those concerns constructively transformed her from one of Hollywood's most sought-after actresses into someone productions actively avoided despite her immense talent. Sean Penn's rage didn't stop at paparazzi. He's allegedly attacked co-stars, directors, and even random extras who looked at him wrong. His temper hasn't just ended relationships, it's landed him in jail.
I have had a lot of time, to think about what it is that makes somebody a good parent. And it's about constancy.
6. Sean Penn, the method actor's methodical rage. Sean Penn's extraordinary talent as an actor, evidenced by 2 Academy Awards and a body of work spanning 4 decades, has been matched throughout his career by an equally extraordinary temper that has resulted in criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and a reputation for volatility that even Hollywood's most forgiving power brokers have sometimes found difficult to accommodate. His rage was part of his method, and his legacy, observed a director who has worked with Penn. Unlike some difficult stars whose temper seems disconnected from their artistic process, Sean's intensity both on and off camera seemed to come from the same source, a raw, emotional authenticity that made him brilliant on screen but sometimes dangerous in real life. Penn's most public displays of anger have involved physical altercations with photographers, confrontations that twice resulted in jail time. In 1987, he served 33 days of a 60-day sentence for assaulting a photographer on a film set. In another incident, he allegedly hung a paparazzo by his ankles from the balcony of a 9th-floor hotel room after finding him in his hotel room. The paparazzi incidents got the most publicity, but they weren't isolated events, explained a production coordinator who worked on a Penn film in the 1990s. His anger could be triggered by virtually anything: a crew member walking through his line of sight, a co-star delivering a line differently than he expected, even caterers serving food he didn't like. The entire set would freeze when he was displeased, everyone bracing for the explosion. Unlike stars whose difficult behavior is primarily verbal, Penn's anger has repeatedly crossed into physical territory. During his brief marriage to Madonna in the 1980s, he allegedly tied her to a chair and physically abused her for several hours after finding her with another actor, an incident Madonna has since denied. On the set of Colors, he reportedly punched an extra who was photographing him without permission. Working with Sean meant accepting that physical intimidation was always a possibility, recalled a crew member who worked on multiple Penn projects. He might not actually hit you, but he would use his body language, his proximity, and his intensity to make you feel physically threatened if you displeased him. It created an atmosphere of constant anxiety that affected everyone's work. Directors have faced particular challenges with Penn's volcanic temperament. During filming of The Thin Red Line, he reportedly clashed so severely with director Terrence Malick that his role was substantially reduced in the final cut. On Shanghai Surprise, his conflicts with the director and producers contributed to the film's troubled production and eventual commercial failure. What complicates any discussion of Sean's behavior is his undeniable commitment to social causes off-set, noted a journalist who has covered Penn's career. The same intensity that makes him difficult on productions drives his humanitarian work in Haiti, his political activism, and his willingness to place himself in dangerous situations to help others. This creates a complex moral equation when evaluating his legacy. This complexity extends to Penn's relationships with co-stars, which have ranged from deep mutual respect to open hostility. Actors who match his intensity, like Benicio del Toro or Naomi Watts, often report positive experiences working with him. Those who approach their craft differently have sometimes found themselves targets of his contempt both on set and in subsequent interviews. Sean divides the world into those he respects and those he doesn't, explained a co-star who worked with Penn in the 2000s. If he decides you're in the latter category, there's virtually nothing you can do to change his mind. He'll make your professional life miserable and feel completely justified in doing so because, in his view, you failed to meet his standards for artistic integrity. Despite his difficult reputation, Penn continues to secure prestigious roles and attract top collaborators, a testament to both his exceptional talent and the industry's willingness to tolerate difficult behavior from artists it perceives as irreplaceable. Unlike some stars whose temper has gradually diminished their career opportunities, Penn's intensity remains both his defining characteristic and his most marketable quality. The industry's accommodation of Sean's behavior reflects a fundamental question about art and ethics, observed a film historian. If someone creates truly transcendent work but behaves destructively in the process, where should we draw the line? Sean's career suggests that in Hollywood, at least, that line is drawn very generously for those with sufficient talent. Bill Murray's quirky public persona hid decades of alleged abuse. The man who crashes weddings and bartends at random parties has also reportedly made co-stars cry, physically assaulted colleagues, and gotten multiple films shut down.
Chicks dig me because I rarely wear underwear, and when I do, it's usually something unusual.
7. Bill Murray, the beloved star's dark side. For decades, Bill Murray cultivated a public persona as comedy's beloved eccentric, the unpredictable genius who might show up at your college party, join your kickball game, or wash dishes at your local bar. This carefully crafted image of spontaneous joy and detached wisdom made him one of Hollywood's most universally adored figures. Behind this charming facade, however, lurked a pattern of allegedly abusive behavior that the entertainment industry largely ignored until it could no longer be denied. Funny guy, until the camera cuts, remarked a crew member who worked with Murray on multiple projects. The Bill Murray the public loves, the one who photobombs engagement pictures and gives philosophical life advice to strangers, bears little resemblance to the Bill Murray that many film workers have experienced. That version can be cold, dismissive, and explosively angry when things don't meet his expectations. Murray's difficult behavior remained largely concealed from the public until 2022, when production on the film Being Mortal was suspended following a complaint about his conduct on set. According to reports, Murray had allegedly engaged in inappropriate behavior with a much younger female crew member, behavior he later characterized as intended to be funny, but was received as inappropriate. The production never resumed, effectively canceled, despite being partially filmed and having a budget of approximately $20 million. The Being Mortal incident was just the most recent and public example of a pattern that extends back decades, explained a director who has worked with Murray. His unpredictability and volatility have been open secrets in Hollywood since the 1980s, but his commercial value and the public's affection for him created a protective shield that's only recently begun to crack. Examples of Murray's allegedly difficult behavior span his entire career. During the filming of Charlie's Angels, 2000, he reportedly got into a physical altercation with co-star Lucy Liu after criticizing her acting abilities. According to Liu's account, Murray began using inexcusable and unacceptable language toward her during a scene rehearsal, leading to a confrontation that has become legendary in Hollywood circles. What makes Murray's case particularly interesting is how his legitimate comic genius and unique screen presence enabled decades of problematic behavior, observed an industry analyst. Studios and directors were willing to accommodate his difficult moments because when he was engaged and cooperative, he delivered performances no other actor could replicate. This created a cost-benefit analysis that usually tipped in Murray's favor until very recently. Richard Dreyfuss, who co-starred with Murray in What About Bob, 1991, has described working with Murray as an absolute nightmare, claiming Murray threw an ashtray at his face during an off-set confrontation. Director Harold Ramis, who collaborated with Murray on classics like Caddyshack and Groundhog Day, experienced such severe conflicts with the actor during Groundhog Day that their friendship ended for over 20 years. Murray would sometimes go cold and simply refuse to communicate, revealed a production assistant who worked on a Murray film in the 1990s. He wouldn't acknowledge questions, would ignore direction, and would create an atmosphere so uncomfortable that it affected everyone's work. Other times, he would become verbally aggressive, using his quick wit as a weapon to humiliate anyone he felt had crossed him. A distinctive aspect of Murray's difficult behavior is his long-standing refusal to have an agent, manager, or even a reliable contact method. For decades, he has used only an 800 number with no voicemail, making it nearly impossible for studios or directors to communicate with him directly. While portrayed in media coverage as charming eccentricity, this arrangement effectively shields Murray from professional accountability. The 800 number isn't quirky, it's strategic, explained the director. Without agents or managers to answer to, there's no one whose job is to tell Bill when his behavior crosses lines or to help him understand the impact of his actions on others. There's no buffer between his impulses and their consequences, no professional representative whose livelihood depends on maintaining his reputation. Despite these well-documented difficulties, Murray's exceptional talent and unique screen presence have ensured his continued relevance in the industry. Directors continue to pursue him for roles despite knowing the potential complications, and audiences remain largely unaware of his behind-the-scenes reputation. Whether the being mortal incident represents a turning point in how the industry accommodates his behavior remains to be seen. Murray's case illustrates Hollywood's selective memory, concluded the industry analyst. The same industry that immediately canceled less powerful figures for similar or lesser offenses spent decades mythologizing Murray's difficult behavior as delightful nonconformity rather than addressing its impact on those forced to work with him. That contradiction reveals much about how power operates in entertainment. Tommy Lee Jones doesn't just play intimidating characters. He specializes in reducing co-stars and directors to tears with just a glare. The legendary actor doesn't need to raise his voice. His contempt is loud enough.
I did it on purpose, and I believe.
8. Tommy Lee Jones, the cold fury behind the badge. Unlike many celebrities whose temper manifests as explosive outbursts, Tommy Lee Jones has cultivated a different but equally intimidating form of anger, a cold, contemptuous disdain that can freeze an entire film set and reduce colleagues to stammering anxiety with nothing more than a withering glare or cutting remark. "No one rolls their eyes harder," commented a director who has worked with Jones. "Tommy doesn't need to scream or throw things to terrify a set. His weapon of choice is contempt, a palpable, bone-chilling disdain for anything he considers unprofessional, unnecessary, or simply beneath his standards. That contempt can be more intimidating than the loudest tantrum from other difficult actors." Jones's reputation for coldness toward colleagues became public knowledge after Jim Carrey revealed their difficult relationship during the filming of Batman Forever, 1995. According to Carrey, Jones once told him bluntly during a restaurant encounter, "I cannot sanction your buffoonery," a phrase that perfectly encapsulates Jones's approach to those whose work methods differ from his own intensely serious technique. Working with Tommy means understanding that he has zero tolerance for anything he perceives as wasting his time, explained a producer who has collaborated with Jones on multiple projects. He arrives meticulously prepared and expects everyone else to maintain the same standards. Unprepared directors, actors who improvise excessively, or crew members who make technical mistakes all risk becoming targets of his legendary contempt. This intolerance for what he perceives as unprofessionalism has led to numerous conflicts throughout Jones's career. During production of The Fugitive, he reportedly clashed with director Andrew Davis over technical aspects of the filming. On Men in Black 3, tensions between Jones and co-star Will Smith became so significant that they reportedly filmed many scenes separately to minimize their interaction. Tommy's particularly hard on directors, noted a cinematographer who has worked on Jones productions. If he decides a director doesn't know what they're doing or isn't communicating clearly, he'll essentially take over his own performance, ignoring direction, altering dialogue, and sometimes even repositioning himself for scenes. It's not done as a power play, but from a genuine belief that his experience gives him better insight than the person nominally in charge. Unlike stars whose difficult behavior seems rooted in ego or insecurity, Jones's temperament appears connected to an unwavering commitment to quality and efficiency. His military school background and Harvard education manifest in an approach to filmmaking that values precision, preparation, and no-nonsense execution over the more fluid, exploratory methods preferred by many contemporary directors and actors. The challenge with Tommy isn't that he's wrong about his criticisms. He's usually right when he identifies problems, observed a screenwriter who has worked on Jones projects. The issue is his delivery and his apparent inability to recognize how his contemptuous approach affects others. He creates an atmosphere of such intense judgment that people become nervous and make more mistakes, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that reinforces his low opinion of them. Despite his reputation for difficult behavior, Jones continues to work steadily with top directors and fellow stars, a testament to his extraordinary talent and the gravitas he brings to every role. His Academy Award for The Fugitive and 4 additional nominations confirmed the industry's recognition of his exceptional abilities despite the challenges of working with him. What makes Tommy's case interesting is that his temper isn't about losing control. It's about exerting it, noted a film historian. Unlike actors who explode unpredictably, Tommy's anger is precisely deployed and entirely intentional. He uses his displeasure as a tool to shape productions according to his standards, and while his methods may be harsh, they often result in better work from everyone involved, albeit at a significant psychological cost. This psychological cost has led some colleagues to avoid working with Jones despite his undeniable talent. Directors with more collaborative approaches and actors who rely on improvisation or emotional exploration often find themselves particularly at odds with his rigid expectations and withering judgment. Tommy represents an old-school approach to professionalism that values results over process, concluded the producer. He doesn't care if people like him or feel comfortable around him. He cares only that the final product meets his exacting standards. In an industry increasingly concerned with creating supportive, inclusive environments, his uncompromising approach feels increasingly anachronistic, even as his performances remain compelling and authentic. She wasn't just difficult on one show, she was fired from 2 of TV's biggest hits for the exact same behavior. Shannon Doherty's legendary tantrums didn't just end relationships, they ended entire career chapters.
The Palm Springs, everybody went down there and jammed with the grandparents. I like that.
9. Shannon Doherty, television's double casualty. Few television stars have been fired from hit shows due to behavioral issues. Shannon Doherty has the distinction of being dismissed from 2 massive successes, Beverly Hills 90210 and Charmed, for allegedly creating toxic work environments through her volatile temper and conflicts with co-stars. This remarkable double occurrence speaks to both the intensity of her behavior and the unusual patience the industry initially extended to the talented but troubled actress. Teen drama queen, on and off set, remarked a television producer who worked with Doherty in the 1990s. What made Shannon's temper particularly problematic was how it manifested in a team environment like a television series. Unlike film sets where difficult behavior might be tolerated for a finite shooting period, TV shows require sustainable working relationships over many years. Shannon's conflicts created such persistent tension that eventually continuing with her became untenable, regardless of her character's popularity. Doherty's difficulties on Beverly Hills 90210 have been extensively documented by both co-stars and producers. Jason Priestley, in his memoir, described her as frequently late, unprofessional, and prone to tantrums when displeased. Tori Spelling later revealed that she had called her father, series producer Aaron Spelling, to request Doherty's removal after a physical altercation with co-star Jenny Garth, during which crew members had to intervene to prevent escalation. Her behavior on 90210 wasn't just difficult, it was disruptive to the entire production, explained a crew member who worked on the series. She would arrive hours late, complain about her dialogue, storm off set when criticized, and create an atmosphere of tension that affected everyone's work. In television, where shooting schedules are already incredibly tight, this kind of unpredictability creates cascading problems that impact dozens of people. After her dismissal from 90210, Doherty received a second chance with Aaron Spelling's production company when she was cast as one of the leads in Charmed in 1998. This opportunity to rebuild her reputation ended similarly, with Doherty leaving after 3 seasons amid reports of intense conflict with co-star Alyssa Milano. While officially described as a departure rather than a firing, industry insiders have consistently described it as another termination stemming from behavioral issues. What makes Shannon's case particularly interesting is that her talent was never in question, observed a television casting director. She was legitimately excellent in both series, bringing an intensity and authenticity that significantly contributed to their success. The problem wasn't her performance, but everything surrounding it. Her treatment of crew members, conflicts with co-stars, and inability to adapt to the collaborative necessities of television production. Unlike some stars whose difficult behavior stems from substance abuse or untreated mental health issues, Doherty's problems appeared to be primarily temperamental, a volatile personality combined with a young performer's inability to manage the pressures and power that came with sudden fame. This context makes her later growth and self-awareness particularly noteworthy. Shannon's story has an important developmental arc, noted a television historian. The tempestuous young actress who couldn't control her emotions in the 1990s evolved into a much more self-aware professional in later years. Her public battle with cancer revealed a vulnerability and maturity that contrasted sharply with her earlier reputation, suggesting genuine personal growth that many difficult stars never achieve. This evolution became evident in Doherty's more recent work, including her return to the 90210 franchise for a reboot in which former co-stars who had once refused to work with her welcomed her participation. While this reconciliation doesn't erase the impact of her earlier behavior, it suggests a capacity for change and accountability that offers a more hopeful dimension to her story. Television sets are pressure cookers, and Shannon entered that environment as a very young person with little preparation for the stress and scrutiny, observed a psychologist who has worked with young performers. Her inability to manage her emotions effectively created genuine problems for productions, but viewing her solely through the lens of her worst moments overlooks both the circumstances that contributed to that behavior and her subsequent efforts to address it. Werner Herzog once directed him at gunpoint. That's not a metaphor. The legendary filmmaker literally pulled out a loaded gun to keep Klaus Kinski on set. Even in an industry that excuses almost anything, Kinski's rage was in a category all its own.
If it's night, I think it's night.
Yeah.
But it is a pleasure for me.
10. Klaus Kinski, Beyond Hollywood's Breaking Point. While most difficult Hollywood personalities are ultimately accommodated by an industry that prioritizes talent over temperament, German actor Klaus Kinski's volcanic rage pushed beyond even cinema's generous boundaries for bad behavior. His legendary tantrums, physical assaults on crew members, and megalomaniacal demands created a category of difficult behavior that remains unmatched in film history. He didn't act insane, he was, stated legendary director Werner Herzog, who collaborated with Kinski on 5 films despite their infamously torturous relationship. This assessment wasn't hyperbole, but a clear-eyed evaluation of an actor whose behavior went beyond mere difficulty into territory that bordered on genuine danger to those around him. Kinski's most notorious collaboration with Herzog came during the filming of Aguirre, Wrath of God, 1972, in the Peruvian Amazon. When Kinski threatened to abandon the production during a dispute, Herzog reportedly pulled a gun and threatened to shoot the actor and then himself if Kinski left. While Herzog has characterized this story as somewhat exaggerated, he has confirmed that he did threaten Kinski to prevent him from leaving, underscoring the extreme measures required to manage the actor's volatility. Kinski's tantrums weren't just expressions of artistic temperament, they were violent, prolonged psychological storms, explained a film historian who has studied the actor's career. He would scream for hours without stopping, physically assault anyone who tried to intervene, and create such chaos that entire days of shooting would be lost. Yet when the cameras rolled, he delivered performances of such hypnotic intensity that directors continued to work with him despite the enormous difficulties he created. These difficulties weren't limited to emotional outbursts, but often involved physical aggression. During filming of Fitzcarraldo, 1982, Kinski allegedly fired a gun into a hut containing crew members after being disturbed by their noise, grazing one extra's finger. On other productions, he reportedly attacked camera operators, directors, and fellow actors when displeased with their work or behavior. Working with Kinski meant accepting that physical safety wasn't guaranteed, recalled a European cinematographer who observed Kinski on set. He didn't just scream or throw things. He would physically charge at people, shove them, sometimes even strike them. The only thing that prevented more serious incidents was that crew members learned to physically restrain him during his worst outbursts. What distinguishes Kinski's case from other difficult Hollywood personalities is both the extremity of his behavior and his openness about his own volatility. Unlike stars who maintain public facades of professionalism while behaving differently on set, Kinski embraced his reputation for